UXO. The mountains may keep their UXOs buried in silence, but the real explosions are the ones that shatter the hearts of families waiting at home. It was late afternoon in Kargil, that peculiar hour when the mountains cast long shadows, and the icy wind began seeping through the tin walls of our huts. After a long day at the hospital, I had just removed my boots and stretched out for a few moments of rest when the telephone rang sharply. It was my commanding officer. His voice was calm but urgent. "Doctor, 3 casualties are coming from a post in Batalik. Prepare immediately." My heart sank. "Sir, what happened? Is everything all right?" There was a brief pause. "There has been an incident, a UXO blast. 3 soldiers are being evacuated. Their condition is unknown." UXO, unexploded ordnance. These are bombs, artillery shells, grenades, mines, or other munitions that failed to explode when originally deployed. They may remain hidden beneath earth, rocks, or snow for years, even decades, until disturbed. The mountains of Kargil still carried remnants of the 1999 war. What appeared to be an innocent piece of metal could sometimes conceal a deadly legacy. The moment I heard UXO, my mind began preparing for the worst. Blast injuries, multiple splinter wounds, massive trauma, possibly death. "Sir, are any of them alive?" "Really, no idea. They'll reach you in 20 minutes. That was enough. I pulled on my boots and rushed outside. Within minutes, military hospital Kargil transformed from its usual calm into a coordinated emergency unit. Prepare the OT. Ready the ICU, check the ventilators, arrange blood. Doctors, nurses, paramedics, laboratory staff, and orderlies moved rapidly to their positions. An ambulance carrying a doctor and medical team sped toward the helipad to receive the casualties. Then the stretchers arrived. 3 soldiers. We immediately began triage, the harsh but necessary process of determining who could still be saved. 2 were already beyond our reach. One was a buddy soldier, the other was a havildar from the bomb disposal squad. Both had made the supreme sacrifice. The 3rd casualty was a young officer. He was alive, barely. He had sustained multiple splinter injuries across his scalp and face. One fragment had dangerously injured the sclera of his eye. His uniform was torn and blood-stained, but beneath all that trauma, his pulse was still fighting. I looked at the team. "Take him to OT now." The survivor. Inside the operation theater, we began working immediately. Even as we prepared him, the young officer repeatedly whispered the same question. "Baki dono kaise hain?" "How are the other 2? I looked at him and forced myself to smile. "They are fine. Don't worry about them. You concentrate on yourself." It was a lie, but at that moment it was a lie I needed to tell. How could I tell a critically injured man lying on an operating table that the 2 men who had been standing beside him only a short while earlier were already dead? Their bodies had been shifted to the mortuary. As my hands worked, my mind silently prayed for them. Piece by piece, we removed the accessible splinters from the young officer's scalp and treated his wounds. The eye injury required particular care. A fragment had injured the sclera, and preserving his vision was one of our greatest concerns. With careful treatment, and I believe God's grace, we managed to save his eye. After hours of work, his condition stabilized. He was shifted to the officer's ward. 1 life had been saved, but 2 others still awaited us. The final duty. Almost immediately after completing the surgery, Mandalji from the laboratory and I walked toward the mortuary. The hospital corridor felt strangely different now. Minutes earlier, we had been fighting desperately to preserve life. Now we were preparing 2 soldiers for their final journey home. Military medicine teaches you many things that civilian practice rarely prepares you for. One of them is the responsibility of preparing a fallen soldier's mortal remains so that he can return to his family with dignity. The process was solemn and meticulous. The bodies were respectfully preserved and prepared for transportation. They were cleaned, secured appropriately for the long journey ahead, and finally placed into wooden coffins. Then came the moment that remains etched in my memory. The tricolor was placed over each coffin. At that moment, they were no longer casualties from an emergency call. They were soldiers going home. When we finally closed the mortuary door, 2 sentries took position outside. They stood silently through the freezing Kargil night, guarding their fallen brothers one last time. The last post. The following morning, Kargil woke beneath its familiar blanket of cold. But at the hospital, the atmosphere was different. Senior commanders, including the GOC and division commander, arrived to pay their respects. The coffins stood draped in the national flag. Soldiers assembled in silence. Then the bugle sounded, the last post. There are certain sounds that words cannot adequately describe. For a soldier, the last post is one of them. It is not merely music, it is farewell, it is gratitude. It is the army saying to one of its own, "Your duty is complete. Rest now, we will carry on." The coffins were lifted onto the shoulders of their comrades and carried toward the waiting helicopter. From Kargil, they would travel to Leh. From Leh, Indian Air Force aircraft would carry them to their respective states, back to their villages, back to their mothers and fathers, back to their wives and children, back home. One thought was particularly painful. The Havildar from the bomb disposal squad had only 3 months left before retirement. After years of service in some of the country's harshest terrain, home was almost within reach. 3 months. Instead of returning home walking proudly in uniform, he would now return wrapped in the tricolor. A soldier from Andhra Pradesh, a husband, perhaps a father, a son, a friend, and now a name his regiment would remember. "You lied to me, Dr. Saab." Later that day, I went for my post-operative round. The young officer was awake and I sat beside him. "Kaisi ho?" He looked directly into my eyes. There was something different in his expression. Then he spoke quietly. "Aapne mujhse jhoot bola, Dr. Saab." I remained silent. "They're gone, aren't they?" I exhaled slowly. There was no reason to hide the truth anymore. और क्या बोलता? अगर ट्रूथ तुरंत बोलता तो तुम वो टी टेबल पर ही टूट जाते. What else could I have told you? If I had told you the truth immediately, you might have broken down on the operating table itself. His eyes filled with tears. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked, "Batao, आखिर हुआ क्या था? Tell me, what exactly happened? What happened at Batalik?" His voice was weak, but his memory was clear. "Sir, since the 99 war, UXOs are still found around some of these posts. During patrol, we noticed one." He paused. "We thought somebody might get hurt if it remained there, so we picked it up and carried it back, intending to hand it over to Havildar Saab for proper disposal. When they reached the post, the experienced bomb disposal Havildar immediately realized the danger. He became angry," the officer continued. "He shouted at us, 'Why did you touch this?' Then everything changed. Before he could say anything more, there was an explosion. The officer stared blankly ahead. I was thrown to the ground. After that, I don't remember anything. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. Now I had to tell him what he had been asking since the moment he entered the hospital. Your buddy and Havildar Saab were very close to the blast. Their injuries were devastating. They died almost immediately." He closed his eyes. His lips began to tremble. Then came the words I feared he would say. "It was my fault." "No," I replied firmly. He opened his eyes. "Your intention was to prevent someone else from getting hurt. You made a decision you believed was right at that moment. Don't spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for surviving." He remained silent. The guilt of the survivor is sometimes a wound no surgeon can see. We can remove splinters, we can close wounds, we can save an eye, but there are injuries for which there are no sutures. The splinters. Beside me was a small packet containing some of the metallic fragments we had removed from his body. I picked it up and handed it to him. "These are yours." He looked at me. "Keep them," I said, "as a memory of your brave brothers." He took the packet slowly. For several seconds he simply stared at those small pieces of metal. Then he pressed the packet against his chest. Tears rolled down his face. "I will carry these for life." He paused. "For my body and for Havildar Saab." His voice began to break. He had only 3 months left for retirement. Another silence. Now he will go home wrapped in the tricolor? I had no answer. His voice broke, and somewhere inside me, so did something else. The mountains remember. That night, after completing my rounds, I stepped outside Military Hospital Kargil. The cold wind struck my face. Above me stretched an extraordinary Himalayan sky filled with stars. The mountains stood exactly as they had the night before, silent, enormous, indifferent. Somewhere among those mountains, remnants of an old war still lay hidden beneath snow, stone, and earth. Wars are remembered through dates, operations, maps, victories, medals. But standing there that night, I understood that wars have another history, the history carried inside people. A young officer would carry fragments from that day for the rest of his life. A family in Andhra Pradesh was waiting for a man who had been only 3 months away from retirement. Another family was waiting for their soldier, and 2 coffins were traveling across the Himalayas toward homes that would never again be the same. The mountains had witnessed another explosion. Soon silence would return, snow would fall, footprints would disappear. But somewhere far away, 2 families would hear the echo forever. And that night in Kargil, I understood something I would never forget. The mountains may keep their UXOs buried in silence, but the real explosions are the ones that shatter the hearts of families waiting at home.